Welcome to the 6th episode in the Impact Principles webinar series. I am Diane Damskey, Head of Secretariat of the Impact Principles. This webinar features a discussion with Olivia Prentice, COO and Head of Content at the Impact Management Project, or IMP, followed by a presentation and discussion on Impact Frontiers by Mike McCreless, Head of Investor Collaboration at Impact Frontiers, and Caitlin Rosser, Senior Officer, Impact and Communication at Calvert Impact Capital. I am very happy to be here today with Olivia Prentice, as she and Clara Barbie were both very involved in the external consultation group in the development of the Impact Principles, which was led by IFC. Olivia has also served as an observer on the Impact Principles Advisory Board since it was formed in 2019. In speaking with signatories and now potential signatories, they are all universally pleased to understand that IMP's contributions to the impact investing market are complementary to the impact principles, which have become a standard for impact investors. In the annual disclosure statements posted on our website, you will see that many signatories incorporate IMP's 5 dimensions of impact into their impact management systems. It is often a core piece of an impact management system. Also, the impact principles incorporated the term contribution as one of the 3 core requirements of an impact investor. You must target an intentional impact at the outset of an investment. You must be able to describe the contribution that your capital makes to the impact achieved, which is principle 3, and you must be able to measure the impact. The term contribution is distinct from additionality, which has long been used and has a specific meaning for public sector institutions. IMP has brought together practitioners, standard setters, and other industry organizations to help build a consensus on impact measurement, management, and reporting. IMP has also created the structured network comprised of standard setting organizations, and this has provided a forum for the sharing of best practices, standards, and initiatives on impact measurement, management, and reporting. Olivia will share with us a preview into the next phase of IMP. Mike will then provide insight into Impact Frontiers and how investors use it to discuss, test, and learn new approaches to impact management. Several signatories have taken advantage of Impact Frontiers, Calvert Impact Capital being among them, and we look forward to hearing Caitlin's perspective on this valuable platform. With that, I give the floor to Olivia to talk about the key contributions and initiatives of IMP and also what's next. Olivia?
Hello, everybody. It's really exciting to be able to talk to you all today. I feel like I'm usually listening to all of the updates about the signatories and all of the great work going on. As Diane mentioned, I've been on the kind of standard setting side of this world now for about 6 years. So it's always fun to hear feedback from practitioners, and I'm excited to share a bit of an update today. As Diane mentioned, this work is not yet live, but please do keep it to yourselves. But it's also work that's been ongoing for such a long time. And so it's a really exciting moment to be able to start to share it all with you today. I'm just going to share a couple of slides and then take you through a bit of a demo. So just bear with me one moment where I just pull those up. Okay, hopefully that is all clear and on the screen now. So I'm not going to assume that you've all been following IMP. We've been around now for, as Diane said, since 2016. I'm doing some consensus building work, but you might have been aware of us back then. And what was brilliantly timed was that as IMP's consensus building effort came to an end, that was just when the impact principles were being developed. And so in many ways, the principles were able to take further and codify what the practitioner community of over 2,000 organizations had started to test with us. I hope some of you on the phone were part of that process. And then there was a real step change, really, in the phases of IMP. We then started working with the standard setters, as Diane said, including those on the screen here, but not limited to by any means. And what united these organizations to come together was a real desire to respond to what they were hearing from practitioners, which was that there are too many standards, there are too many tools and frameworks. How do I use them together? Which one's best for me? And what really struck us as IMP, speaking to the wide range of different practitioners, from corporates to impact investors to ethical investors and nonprofits, right across the spectrum, was that actually there wasn't a one-size-fits-all solution. there were different tools and different standards for different needs. And not only that, but there are different tools and standards for different parts of the process, akin really to financial management, where audit plays one role, accounting plays another, and principles of management play another. And so really what this structured network has come together to do is to try and explain to the market how their resources can all be used collectively in what we've been colloquially for the last 3 years calling a system of standards, but also to recognize that this is a very nascent market. You know, it's not yet fully developed, and there will be areas where more work is needed, more harmonization, and maybe even consolidation. And it's actually quite exciting to be able to share that the Value Reporting Foundation, who's in the middle there, used to be 2 organizations, SASB and IRC, who have come together to be able to consolidate their work and make it easier for practitioners to access. I don't know if you can now see my screen better. Is that better? I heard that you could have presenter view. I'm going to keep going because I'm not going to share my slides for too long. So what these organizations have been doing with us for the last couple of years is focusing on agreeing between themselves, what are the actions of impact management? And so I wanted to share this wheel here because it's a core product of this work. Now, rest assured, this is not a new framework. Nothing is new. It is not trying to reinvent the wheel, quite literally. But these actions, some of you might know as being the Capitals Coalition, Natural and Social Capital Protocol actions, which is what the organizations involved in the network were first discussing together. That led to the organizations discussing, okay, so which of us have resources that help you set objectives? Which of us help you measure? Which of us help you value from different perspectives? Which of us help you disclose and report to different stakeholders? And so this wheel has been the foundation of what the organizations have been working on. What's nice is that this work has been very much grounded in all of the principles that exist, and obviously not least the IFC. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. The operating principles for impact management. Sorry, Diane. And as you can see here, this is the investor perspective where obviously the measurement is down to the organization itself, the asset or the company. And so what's reflected by those been grayed out is that the investor is taking that information and using it for its own processes. And so these numbers here reflect themselves drive those same actions. What we hope to do over time through the site that we're going to be launching collectively as a network is really help those who use the principles, both these and some of the UNIPA 5 principles, perhaps PRI, really be able to navigate from the things that they've committed to do as organizations through to areas of the website that help them execute on these different actions. And so what I'd love to do now is just take you through this website very briefly and give you a sense of what I mean by executing on these different principles and finding these resources. So bear with me one moment, and while I just quickly switch my screen around. You see that one okay? So for the first time, this is the site. It's going to be called the Impact Management Platform. You can tell there that the acronym might be leveraging the IMP. And this is really an evolution, as I say, of what the IMP is trying to be doing. It will be managed by the structured network themselves, not by the IMP as a time-bound initiative, but by those organizations on the screen before who have come together to explain how their resources can be used together. Now, this site looks very static and flat at the moment. It's still in development. It's the beta site. But I really wanted you to get a sense of the functionality and what this means for you all as signatories. It's actually not just for impact investors. As I mentioned, it's for organizations of any nature. And indeed, as investors, you might use this site to manage your portfolio of investments, but also how you operate and affect your customers and your employees and the natural environment in which you work as an organization at the same time. And so what this site will enable you to do is have a look at the wheel that we've just been talking through and think about which principle you want to work on, maybe based on the feedback you've got from your Assura verification report. It might be about identifying topics better, not just identifying those that you intend to have a positive impact on, but thinking about your materiality process. What the site will help you do is look at an overview that's been co-written by all of those standard setters, which give you a sense of the different ways that you can approach this topic. It'll also make sure to have a look at the different definitions. Now, these are not going to be definitions necessarily that everybody agrees on. You can see in that source there that maybe some do, some don't, but it'll help you navigate some of the technical constructs if they're new to you. And then there are some visuals to bring some of these concepts to life, but critically, underneath each section will be the resources, standards, or guidance that are relevant for each organization to use to bring that piece of content to action. So to action one of these principles. And then it'll link straight out to that site using this here, or you can favorite it to come back later. And then I will just finally show you that, of course, all of these resources will be able to be searched and filtered by maybe whether you're an investor or a company. And again, you can use that same functionality of linking out to the resource itself or favoriting. We hope that this will help you all as practitioners really be able to figure out which resources are best fitted for you, in addition to what you maybe already use, or maybe better understand things that you've heard of in the market but haven't quite figured out exactly what they're useful for yet. So I'm sorry about that whirlwind tour. I really look forward to you all exploring the site in more detail. To say final words about the launch, it will be launched around the 29th of September, so please look out for that press release. There will then be a launch webinar, probably around the 4th or the 5th of October, which will involve a little bit more information about how the site will be managed and governed and updated, and also how to get involved yourselves. So I'll pause there and over to you again, Diane. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Olivia. Those were very helpful slides. One question I had for you is, as you know, so many people access the IMP website now, and this is obviously quite different than the IMP website. So are you going to have explanatory sessions in that webinar about how people can leverage the current IMP website and kind of move forward to this next offering of the platform?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. So the IMP website in its current form, all the norms that were agreed upon with the practitioner community will continue to exist. And what will hopefully be clearer through this new site is where the 5 dimensions fit into that overall set of actions that I mentioned. So within the assess impact action, you will find the 5 dimensions, you will find the ABCs, you'll find investor contribution, and all of the things that you might already be using for your own practice. Of course, we really welcome feedback, especially over the next year. So if there are pieces that you feel are missing or not clear enough, or would like to see things made clearer between how the different tools and resources fit together, that's what the site is for. And so we really look forward to making that clearer. But I'll also let Mike shortly talk to more about how the practitioner side of things will develop once the IMP itself steps away from this project.
Now, you said the structured network will manage the website. Is that going to be the sole function of the structured network moving forward, or is that still to be determined?
It's still to be determined. I think there's a real appetite from the organizations involved to say that this is a great moment in the process of harmonization and clarification of the market, but the work's not done yet. And of course, the world around us continues to evolve, and so do the standards, and there is probably more work to do. And so I know that the group involved in figuring out what the long-term vision of this site and this initiative looks like are really excited to share this in more detail on the launch webinar.
That's great. Now, on another topic, this was another initiative of IMP. You had a seat at the table with the standard setters with respect to discussions on the increasing regulatory environment and reporting requirements. So can you comment on what is the state of affairs since the statement of intent on corporate reporting was released last fall?
So there's been a lot going on the disclosure side. And I think the really important thing to note is that this site that I just showed you, it is broader than just reporting. I think there's a common misconception or a lot of discussion in the market at the moment just about reporting, but the disclosure piece is that outer ring of that wheel I shared. And so what's really complementary about this is as the disclosure regulations and recommendations evolve, and as that group of 5 work closely, as are the EU, as are the IFRS Foundation on new standards and guidance, those will be very clearly linked to this site. And I think, of course, the reason it's a wheel more than anything, just to kind of bring it to life a bit more, is that those internal management actions in the middle, they are the prerequisite, of course, for getting that information that can be disclosed. And so I think this is where the organizations involved have been really keen to make sure that it's additive. You know, there's so much more work that's been done recently on using thresholds, assessing information, using data, finding data, and that's all a really cool part of the process that's all internal and needs to power that that disclosure regulation when it comes. And so hopefully that will be a nice suite of announcements through the fall from this launching through to hopefully the launch of the IFRS Sustainability Board in whatever form it takes in November.
That's great. Thanks so much, Olivia. That was very helpful, and I'm sure we'll have some comments later. So Mike, let's shift the focus to Impact Frontiers, which many signatories do know about, and they have accessed it through the IMP network, and give the floor to you to talk more about it. And for those that aren't familiar with it, I hope you'll give us some additional background and tell people how to access this.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane. And hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm just sharing my screen. Diane, do you see the screen? Great. Thank you. Just to give the punchline up first, Impact Frontiers is not a standard. It isn't a forum for creating standards. It's really a forum for practitioners to advance their approaches to impact management and impact financial integration through what I would describe as a guided do-it-yourself approach with a peer group to support you. So I'll unpack a little bit about that and how it works in a moment, but I'll back up and share where did this come from and where is it going. It actually came from my organization and my previous role at Root Capital as head of impact. Root Capital being a social investment fund that lends to agricultural businesses in Africa and Latin America, where this was before the impact principles existed. And so we were, hacking our own way through the jungle of impact management. And I like to think of impact management as this first mountain in the foreground. And we spent years trying to advance our impact management practice. And I think of it as getting to a certain altitude on that mountain, and felt good about ourselves for maybe a minute before we realized that there's this whole other mountain behind the first mountain that nobody told us about, which was that everything we had done, we had built in a silo. And because we had built our impact management approach in a silo, it wasn't useful for decision making. It wasn't driving portfolio construction. If I'm honest, it was a great deal of it was just held in an Excel file somewhere and then rolled out for annual reporting. And so then we set out on scaling to that second mountain of pulling our impact information and data and analysis and vocabulary out of its silo and integrating it with financial risk and return, both conceptually and analytically, but also in our processes and systems, so that eventually we could get to that third mountain in the distance of managing and constructing our portfolio towards an integrated frontier of impact risk and return and financial risk and return. That was in the first part of the 2010 to 2016. In 2017, we published an article called Toward the Efficient Impact Frontier in Stanford Social Innovation Review, and started hearing from other investors that they also struggled with this siloing of impact management in their organizations. And they looked nothing like Root Capital, and they didn't want to copy what Root Capital did at all. But they expressed interest in, are there generalizable principles, or is there a common process that they could follow using their own data and their own investment strategies to ask themselves the same questions as Root Capital asked and get to their own answers? And so with the benefit of support from the MacArthur Foundation and Omidyar Network, we brought together this group of well over 13 pioneering impact investors to come together, to all go down the path together and come to that generalizable set of steps that other investors can follow in the future. You can see these are the investors in that first Impact Frontiers cohort. There were 13, of which 5 were signatories. And I'm so pleased that Caitlin is here from Calvert to share a little bit about the experience in a moment. Just to explain how this all fits together, this pilot cohort was launched at Root Capital in 2018 while I was there. And then in the meantime, I had become a very active and enthusiastic participant in the IMP's practitioner community in its first phases. And so when there's an opportunity to migrate the collaboration from Root Capital to the IMP as a more natural platform for industry collaboration, I jumped at that chance. So the collaboration concluded at the IMP and has then continued on since within the IMP. And I just want to take a moment to say that I'm very grateful to Clara and to Olivia and the team at the IMP for providing such a great place for Impact Frontiers to incubate and for supporting Impact Frontiers to continue on after the IMP sunsets. But back to our story. The members of that first cohort came together as a group and collectively co-authored what they learned in this article in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, which outlines 4 steps that we believe any investor should follow, and also provided a much more detailed handbook for those that are doing the hard work of implementation. And you can find both of those at our website at impactfrontiers.org. Building on the experience of the first cohort, this year in 2021, we've launched 5 new cohorts and are launching 1 more this fall. So collectively, including about 60 investors, of which several are also signatories. And the strategy going forward for growth is to partner wherever possible with industry associations or networks that are already on the ground, doing great work in different regions and different asset classes. And rather than building something that would compete with them, to really support their leadership and advancing the impact management practices of their members. And so you can see we're launching a cohort in Asia with the Asia Venture Philanthropy Network, in Canada with actually a whole consortium of field building organizations in Canada convened by Rally Assets, and in the US in the venture capital and private equity space with Impact Capital Managers. And only where we haven't yet identified the right industry association or network, we convene and facilitate the cohort ourselves. And so that's where you see on the bottom row, there's a cohort of international, especially Latin American focused venture capital, cohort of CDFIs in the US, especially focused on racial equity, and a cohort of mostly international institutional asset managers and asset owners. And there isn't room for all of the logos on this slide, but there are another half dozen or so signatories in these six cohorts. The way it works is that each cohort member participates in about a dozen workshops over the course of a year. And during these workshops, we try to deliver the content that we've heard that investors find useful in developing their approach to impact management, and especially to integrate impact with financial risk and return. And like I said, it's a guided do-it-yourself collaboration. So in parallel, each organization does their own work internally to advance their approaches within their organization, using the concepts that are provided in the workshops. And they also participate in smaller peer groups in which they can share the approaches that they're developing and give and receive feedback with a group of peers who have a lot of insight because they're on a similar journey. And at the end of each cohort, as a public good, we publish the learnings of the investors that participated to make it easier for other investors to follow suit in the future, so that it won't have to be such a custom job in the future. Coming to the end of the slides, just to clarify a few common questions about how does Impact Frontiers fit into the landscape. Excuse me. We've already covered much of the top row, but just want to say it out loud that it isn't consulting, it isn't assurance, it isn't verification. I often use the metaphor of a sandbox in which investors can experiment with the different standards, the different principles and guidance that are out there, start to figure out what fits their particular model and how do these things fit together, and move forward on implementation. And so Impact Frontiers provides that sort of dedicated sandbox. But it isn't itself a standard or a framework, nor is it a forum for creating additional standards or frameworks. brings us to the next point, which is that each investor does have to do the work themselves. It isn't really like a webinar series that you would just sit in on and audit. The spirit of it is that each investor joins because they really want to push forward their practices and do so as part of a peer group on a common journey. It's agnostic or inclusive of investors' impact and financial goals, and also of diverse impact frameworks and standards. And in fact, we will be using the impact management platform that Olivia just described to introduce all of the cohorts to the different standards and principles that are out there. So that'll be our anchor in terms of impact management. And lastly, it's a nonprofit field building effort that is supported by financial contributions from the investors that participate, but also by grant contributions that make it possible for us to publish all of the insights and case studies and examples as a public good for use by any investor in the future. So with that, we'd just refer you to the website and to the LinkedIn page, and we can talk a little bit more about next steps, maybe towards the end of the webinar, Diane. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was very, very helpful. I know that Caitlin had to drop out because of her internet for a few minutes, but I think she's back, and we would love to hear, Caitlin, about your or Calvert Impact Capital's experience with Impact Frontiers, and really just how that experience you would encourage others to participate in. Well, Caitlin will hopefully dial in. Are you back, Caitlin?
Yes, I am, and I'm trying to also navigate on my phone at the same time. Of course, this happens right when I'm about to come in and do my 5 minutes. But hopefully we'll be good. Thank you so much for your patience, and thanks so much, Diane, for including me in this. Mike and Olivia for what you've presented. I continue to be just a huge cheerleader and fan for, not only the work of the IMP, but the work of the Impact Frontiers. So Calvert Impact Capital joined the first Impact Frontiers cohort back in 2018 when Mike launched it. And frankly, our motivations for joining is that we were going to do it on our own anyway. We had read Mike's article in Stanford Social Innovation Review from when he was at Root. We basically wanted to implement a similar, our Calvert Impact Capital strategy is very different from Root Capital's, but we wanted to take the model and kind of implement it in our organization in our own way. So when Mike was launching this Impact Frontiers group, we said, sign us up. If we've got 12 other investors plus a leader who has done this before, who wants to kind of hold our hand through this a little bit, then we're all for it. And for us, I think that the picture that Mike showed with the 3 mountain peaks is really poignant, because for us, we kind of started the same way. Even though Mike had published this paper, we really came to this from a motivation of wanting to improve our impact management and better integrate it within our investment process. But we weren't thinking about optimizing portfolio construction or financial impact integration at that point in time. We were just thinking exclusively, let's have a more robust impact management process in line with our very robust financial and credit risk due diligence process. And then so taking us through the Impact Frontiers cohort was just completely eye-opening in terms of you can have a robust impact management process as well as a robust kind of integrated impact financial diligence and management. So, we were really focused on diligence at the beginning, and it became for us so much more than just diligence. And that's where this feeds into the impact principles, is that it's not just about diligence. Impact management is throughout the entire investment life cycle. And so we found the Impact Frontiers approach just so complementary to the work that we ultimately started doing with the impact principles when they launched in 2019. And so for us, our process was about 6 months, just to give folks a little bit of background into what Calvert Impact Capital went through. The cohort that we first joined, the first cohort, was about 2 years. The first 6 months of that was really planning, and then about a year of testing the tool that we created. So testing it with our investments team, making sure that we got our investments team buy-in and input as well, because ultimately they're the ones that use the tool every day. And so we really wanted to make sure that it was integrated into our process and that our investments team had input into the process as well. And really that's all to say that it took time. You know, it was a 2-year cohort at first, and it took 2 years for us to fully integrate the tool into our investment life cycle. We started in 2018 and we launched version 1.0 of what we call our impact scorecard. That's our impact rating tool. We launched version 1.0 in January of 2020. So it took quite a long time. And I think that actually benefited us though, because it's as you'll read, if you read some of the pieces that the collaboration put out, like the handbook and the article, this is not only an impact management process, this is a really heavy change management process. And so really bringing people along the way, management, senior management, our investments team, was just truly, truly critical to actually having a tool that worked for us, that actually integrated everything that we wanted it to have, as well as an accepted tool that our investments team was excited to use, frankly, and really felt that the tool helped them better communicate the impact that their deals that they were diligencing had to our credit committees. And so really communicating what's in it for your investments team, I think really helped us as well. So as far as just kind of my general recommendations, I'd say start with, you know, if you're interested and you want to get involved in Impact Frontiers, start with what you value as an investor. You know, look at the impact principles, kind of the 9 principles. Start with one. It's really about your theory of change and your values and your impact strategy. So we started there, and I would recommend folks do as well. Include the investments team. This is a real change management process. I mean, that's truly integral. It will take time, but if you allow it to take the time that it deserves, you'll have a product that is actually integrated into your investment lifecycle and management process, as opposed to a tool that your investments team just thinks is some impact thing. It's actually integrated into your entire process. And lastly, there's a lot of resources out there that the Impact Frontiers that have put out, you know, resources in terms of the article, the handbook, different papers, webinars, but resources in terms of just people. You know, I probably get an email from Mike every couple of months with a referral to talk to someone considering joining the Impact Frontiers, and I'm always happy to chat. So Mike is here as a resource, I'm here as a resource, other signatories and other cohort members are as well. So please feel free to reach out.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. Your enthusiasm is infectious, I have to say. And I'd like to hear from both you and Mike. Are you, given your experience, Caitlin and Mike, since you've been working with various cohorts, are you seeing some best practices emerge? And is this, maybe perhaps you have a paper in the works, but do you anticipate being able to write about best practices after you've completed several cohorts?
I can jump in. We absolutely are, and the first layer of best practices are the ones that are at the most general level, that are applicable across asset classes and across geographies and sectors. And that's what we tried to focus on communicating the first time around in the first cohort. Going forward, I think the opportunity is to become more specific about what does this look like for venture capital as opposed to for listed equities, as opposed to, you know, private debt, and begin to develop some examples. And the approach is always to not lead with theory, but to actually work, you know, advanced practices that are, you know, embraced and really work for different organizations, and then look at the commonalities across those. And so that's what we'll be doing in this current phase and publishing next year.
No, that will be a wonderful addition, because the one thing I do hear from potential signatories is, how are other people doing it? So we really are working in the signatory base to establish some best practices across what we've worked on, impact measurement, but impact assessment, and really there's some of the particulars, just everyone, they are very siloed. So I think this is an incredible addition to the market. And I, you know, really appreciate what Impact Frontiers has done, and do encourage signatories to reach out to Mike and Caitlin, who's always a resource, to talk about this, because even if we had a signatory cohort, maybe you pick a slice of signatories that would like to dedicate some time to that. I think that would be very beneficial. So I'm going to give everybody just a minute to and my dog as well, to give some final comments that you'd like to leave everyone with before we close the session. So with that, let me go back to Olivia.
Thank you, Diane. No, just to say that I echo everything that's been said about Frontiers. I'm also a huge champion, and really, really do encourage folks to get involved, particularly if they're either new or struggling with an aspect of it. But yeah, just to reiterate that we're really excited. We'd love to see you all on the October launch of the Impact Management Platform. Please let us know if you have any feedback, and you'll hear a lot more about that throughout the fall. And just thank you again to Diane for hosting the session.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Mike?
No, just want to really express my appreciation to you, Diane, and to Olivia and Caitlin, and my enthusiasm to have conversations with anybody who's on the call, and also to explore the possibility of doing something together with the operating principles for impact management. That's exactly the type of collaboration that we're hoping to stimulate. So thank you.
And Caitlin?
I'll just reiterate as well that the Impact Frontiers is just so complementary to both the impact principles and the impact management projects, impact management norms, like the 5 dimensions, the ABCs. And so for folks who are thinking, I signed on to the impact principles, I did that. I did what I was supposed to do. What's this new thing, this Impact Frontiers, this extra thing that I have to do? It's actually really quite complementary. And if you read, for example, Calvert Impact Capital's impact disclosure against the principles, it talks all about the Impact Frontiers approach, and is really the reason that we felt comfortable signing on to the principles in the first place. So it's so complementary to these 2 other amazing initiatives, these amazing norms that are out. And likewise, I'm always happy to be here as a resource, always happy to chat. So please feel free to reach out.
Great. And with that, I wanted to thank all of the speakers today. This was a great session. I mean, IMP's close collaboration with the impact principles has been incredibly important. And Impact Frontiers, I really think, can be very helpful to signatories and potential signatories moving forward. You can check the website. We will continue to update you on the new impact management platform. And I told Olivia in the past that IMP, we wanted to call these the impact management principles, but the acronym was already taken. So they are continuing with this acronym, so it will never be ours, but we're all linked together, so it doesn't matter. And Mike, I think I don't have a lot of the publications posted, so we will be posting more of the Impact Frontiers publications, and I think that we will have more access to this resource for signatories, so please reach out if you have any questions. And with that, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this episode number 6 of the Impact Principles webinar series, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks so much. Okay, so we're wrapping up the webinar, and now we have the unrecorded Q&A session for all of those that have specific questions that we weren't able to answer during the actual webinar. So please feel free. I don't think there are any questions in the Q&A box, but if any of you would like to ask a question, you can
I have a question from Austin Scott.
Okay, perfect.
Can you see it?
No.
Is Impact Frontiers only for organizations getting started, or is it helpful for established firms?
Thank you, Austin. It's a great question. And I would say both. There are many organizations that already, I would say most already have some level of impact management practice established and some kind of portfolio already established. And then this becomes the way to go for them to go to the next level. But there are also a minority of participants who are really just starting out with their first fund, or maybe they're an established organization launching a new fund and they want this to become the way that they build their impact management approach from the ground up. So I would say both.
And if anyone would like to ask a direct question, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6, and then you can ask the question directly. We'll give everyone a few minutes to become unshy and see if there are any questions. Does anyone have any questions for Olivia, Mike, or Caitlin? See if there's anything here. No? Well, with that, you guys were so thorough that nobody had to ask any follow-up questions. But I would just say stay tuned to the IMP website and also the Impact Frontiers website, and you will get posted on all of the new updates. But thanks everyone for attending. If you have any follow-up questions that you didn't think of at this time, just send them to me and we can follow up with Olivia and Mike. All right, thanks so much everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.